All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been starting to go through a series of videos that are going through a simple payroll application in many iterations to demonstrate the things from our Gaddis textbook, Java Early Objects, 5th edition, from Tony Gaddis, and this is for the AWD1112 Programming with Java class. So far, I've created a couple programs. I did a very simple Hello World and a Chapter 1 program where I came in and hard-coded in all of my values. All right. Now I've got my choice here. What I can do is I can come in and start a brand new project, which is what I'll do in a minute. But in my project, my previous one that I did, I can probably use a lot of this information. So I'm going to do a Control-A, Control-C. I'm just going to copy it to the clipboard. All right. And now I can close this. And I'm going to start up a new project. So project or file new, Java project. And we're going to call this one Ch02 Payroll, but I'm going to call it Payroll A because I'm going to make an A and a B. Now I can click Next, but there's really nothing that happens here. So if I want, I can go right from here and click Finish. Boom, there it created my project. I right mouse click on the source, choose New, choose Package. It'll work even if you don't make a package, but it's considered good practice to do this. So edu.rankin.jpscott. There's my package. Right mouse click again, New, Class. We're again going to keep calling these Payroll. All right, and there's the stuff that I had before. Now, I'm just going to remove all of it and copy in the old stuff. So now this looks exactly like it looked before. So I'm going to have to make some changes. So this is now going to be our second Java payroll program. It demonstrates some of the concepts from Chapter 2 of our textbook. All right. The first thing to notice, again, the package should always be at the top. And then you've got your class designation. Eventually we'll have more than one class. Don't worry about that for right now. Yeah, this is our second program. But now in order to do, in order for us to be able to actually bring in some data, so what I'm saying is run this program and have different inputs every time, I'm going to have to, there's two ways I can do it. For this time, I'm going to type in import java.util. And notice that when I do this, there is some IntelliSense in here. Scanner is what I want. So java.util, and it should have been a capital S. Okay. Again, I'm getting the underscore here because it's saying you've got this variable that you're not using. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of all that stuff where I did the initialization here. I don't want to initialize anything other than strings are going to be set equal to 0. I'm sorry, strings are going to be set equal to the empty string, and numeric variables are going to be set equal to 0. Okay? So that's what I've done. And I still want to do all this stuff that I've got in here, calculate the gross pay, etc. But I want to add some other code in here. And that other code that I want to add is going to ask the user, I want to ask the user to be able, to input data. So every time we run it, I want there to be different data. So I'm going to create a new kind of variable here. I'm going to say here, create scanner variable, which allows us to scan things in, kind of like you'd use from a scanner, but we're going to be doing it from our keyboard. So we're going to say scanner. You can call this whatever you want, but since we're getting it from the keyboard, I'm going to call it keyboard. So scanner keyboard equal new scanner system.in, which means the keyboard. That's our default input device is in. Oops. I don't know what I did there. All right. So once I've done that, now I can input my values. So input variable values. So I'm going to say here system.out.print. Previously we did print line, but we're using print because we want to keep it on the line that we're on. So I'm going to say here, please input employee first name. First name equal keyboard dot next line. Okay? It's going to make more sense to put all this stuff in and then run it and show it to you. So after we do the first name, we'll want to do the last name. Then we'll want to do the hours worked. The order in which you do these is up to you. Now notice here we've said next line, which means that basically you're using a string. But these are going to be doubles, so it's next double. All right. So we want hourly rate. And I guess that should have been hours, sorry. And we've got rate. And then our program will continue on the way that it did before. So let's save it and run it and then go back and kind of deconstruct it. Please input employee's first name. Robert, last name. You may have to put your mouse manually over there. Smith. Hours worked, 35. Hourly rate, 20. And we get our information. Robert Smith, 3520, 700, and the program run. Okay, now a couple things. First of all, you might as well see it now because it's going to be really, really, really easy for you to take this program and break it. Before we do that though, if I come over to here and I got terminate, launch, remove, etc. Notice clear console. You'll probably want to do that before every program run. And I'm going to put in here a couple \n's. So after we do our inputs, then we'll have our outputs. So let's run it one more time. We'll run it and make it work again. Mary Green. Mary worked 20 hours and she makes $100 an hour. And here is Mary's info. Okay, that looks good. But I want to show you again how easy, and that's easy is like a relative term, but I just want you to know how easy it's going to be for us to break this program, because you're all going to do it. I do it. Everybody does it. So let's clear the console again. Run the program again with run. I think you can also click right there. All right, so please enter the first name, Jeff. Enter the last name, Scott. Please enter the hours worked. I'm going to leave it blank. Well, it's waiting for something. How about hello? The program just blew up. Congratulations, we've got our first exception. This says it's an input mismatch exception, which means it was looking for a variable of type double. I gave it a variable of type string. It did not know how to handle it, and it's telling me that it basically broke at line 32, which is my hours for which I put in hello. All right. Again, count on doing this because you're going to. So let's go back and look and see how this program changed from the previous one. Our package statement. Comment changed a little bit. This line, we'll put a little comment here that says like the Visual Studio using statement in C#. This allows us to bring in the Java utility package, and from the utility package we want to use the scanner class. And you'll notice if you look here that this is hyperlinked. So if I put my mouse here, I get information. It says java.util.scanner, a simple text scanner which can parse primitive types and strings using regular expressions. I'm not going to read anymore. You can look at the rest of it yourself. It says press F2 for focus. So you can look through there and get a lot of information. What if that's too hard? Your eyes hurt after you do that, etc. It just confuses the heck out of you. Then you go into your, I would suggest at least, you go and bring up a browser window and type java.sun.com. And that's going to push you off to an Oracle site. Java.sun.com used to be how you'd get to the Java API. You don't anymore, but it'll still get you there. It redirects you there. Otherwise, you can type in oracle.com/technetwork/java, all right, which to me is too much work. Underneath here, I'm going to go to where it says Java APIs. You may or may not remember this. An API is an application program interface. It's more or less a contract between you and the software, where the software says, I'm going to allow you to use this stuff that I've created, and you say, okay, but I'll use it in the way I'm supposed to. So I'm just going to go to the newest, the Java SE8. And over here now, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to try to find I might have to go and look in here. Let's see, java.util. And of course, when I try to find something, it's not showing it to me. Let's do this. I'm just going to Google java.util.scanner. And I know it's going to give me, this is in the help. That might get us to where we want. There we go. Class scanner. As we go on in here, later on in the semester, I'm going to show you how you can write comments that more or less look like these. Okay? Don't worry about it for right now. But if you want more on the has next that we just looked at, notice you use with strings. We also looked at the, not has next, we just looked at the, I don't know what it was, but something with next. We used the next, and we used finds and returns a complete string token, and we did the next double also. Just a way that you can start to learn this stuff. All right? Now, that's all okay, but you may or may not agree with this, but that's kind of like running a console app. What if I wanted to run something that was more GUI-like? That's what we'll do in the next example. So I'm going to grab all of this code, copy it to the clipboard, close this. It says, do I want to save the changes? Yes. All right, now I'm going to close this, and I'm going to do a file, new Java project. We'll call this one Ch02 Payroll B. All right. Right mouse click again, new package edu.rankin.jpscott. Right mouse click, new class, again payroll. Again, we want, it doesn't matter here because we're just copying in our old file. So there's our old one. So this will be, this is our third Java payroll program. It still demonstrates some of the stuff that we used in the previous chapter. This time, again, we're going to do something that's going to be a little more GUI-ized. All right, so notice we had previously said java.util.scanner. Well, we don't want to use java dot, we want to use javax dot swing dot j option pane. And we'll just put here allow for more GUI like input. All right. This stuff will stay the same at the beginning. But now, where we've read all this stuff in, that's all going to change. All right. But we can still say, please input the first name, please input the last name. So I'm going to get rid of all these. Well, let's just show you the way that we'll do it. We don't need the scanner anymore because we're not doing a scanner. But this is going to bring up the equivalent of a text box for us. So everything that we read into that text box will be, here's a surprise, everything that we read into the text box will be text. So we're going to add a couple more variables in here. I like to try to keep my variable types together, so I'm going to say here, whoops, sorry, don't worry about those errors. They're all going to go away in a minute. So string, and I'm going to call this input str for my input string, equals, and again, we'll set that equal to the empty string. And we'll just say temporary input string. What does that mean? You're going to see it in just a moment. Since we got input str, I also want output str. And that's going to be a temporary output string. All right. So those are all my variables. So other than adding an input string and other than adding an output string, it's the same thing that we were doing previously. All right. Now we're going to kind of combine these two things into one. So what I want to say here is first name equal j option pane dot show input dialog, and we're going to say please enter first name. Please enter employee first name. Notice we don't have an error now. I'm going to grab that line again. And now we're going to change this to please, so that'll be last name instead of first, equals please input employee last name. All right, now we want to do something similar here where we want to come in and say hours worked. We want to say hours worked equal this and put in here employee hours worked, but we're going to get an error. And the reason for that is everything that you read in is automatically a string, and we're trying to take it, instead of putting it into a string, I'm getting those errors because there's no semicolons at the end there. I'm trying to, instead of putting it into a string, I'm trying to put it into a double, which it doesn't like. So that's where my input str variable comes in. Then I want to basically go and convert this. So you may or may not remember, but when we were working in Java, we did a parse int and we did a parse double. So here we're going to do a double dot parse double, and I think that P in parse is lowercase. What do we want to parse? The input string that we just put in. All right. So what do we have? It's going to be easier to do this to just run it. All right, it's going to be easier to do this and just run it. And you'll notice so far I haven't used that output string. We're going to do that in just a minute here. All right, we're going to do that. But what I'm trying to do first is just kind of show you, for lack of better words, what this is going to give us. Don't worry about this stuff here, it's fine. But I want to run this, and notice, please input employee first name, Jeff. Please input employee last name, Scott. Please input hours worked, 50. Please input hourly rate, 25. And if we look on the bottom, we still have all of our stuff, still worked. But just like we did our inputs kind of GUI-ized, I'd like to do our outputs GUI-ized. So I'm going to do that. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about everything that we've done in this program. So, build and display output. All right. So output str, or it's our output string, equal, and I'm going to do a little bit of my own kind of goofy formatting for lack of better words. \n program outputs. And another \n. Let's put two of them there. Okay. Again, we're just going to keep building our output string. And we don't, I don't know why that keeps moving like that. I don't need here, even though I put everything in parens, I don't even really need the parens here, and I don't need them anywhere that I'm using them. So, this is going to look familiar. In fact, I think we can grab all of this stuff here. Employee first name. I know this looks a little goofy the way I'm doing it right now, but I'm just trying to kind of run through this. Not I wouldn't say run through it quickly, but quick enough. All right, so now I can get rid of all of these. And believe it or not, I'm just about finished. All right, so I've got all that stuff. And now that I've done all that, now I can say J option pane. Now when I did the input, I did a .show input dialog, but now I want to do a show message dialog, and I'm going to put in here null. Well, we'll talk about that in a later chapter. Output str. All right, so let's save this and run it to see what happens. Enter employee's first name. Jane Doe. Jane worked 70 hours a week and makes $30 an hour. Well, that doesn't look very good, so we'll have to fix that. But if you look, we do have the right information. Okay? And for some reason it did not. Oh, it's because I didn't put \ns at the end. All right, so let's do that. So after outputs, let's put one more \n in here. And I think I only need one backslash n right there. So try it one more time. Jane Doe, I think we said she works 75 hours a week at $20 an hour, and there's her information. All right, so that's a more GUI-ized version of doing this. And just so you know, I can come back to my previous program where I had this, and I had all of this stuff, and I can still, after I print this, or I could do it before, it doesn't matter, I can still display it on screen too. So display this on screen. All right, so now when I run the program, Mark Jones, Mark worked 40 hours a week, and Mark makes $15 an hour. So there's Mark's information here, and there's Mark's information there. All right, so how did this program differ from the previous one? Well, it's GUI-ized. Instead of importing java.util.scanner, we're importing javax.swing.jOptionPane. Give you a very quick little historical perspective that you may not care anything about. Java kind of got a bad rap when it first started for a lot of reasons. Some of them were warranted, some of them were not. But Java was known as kind of being a resource hog, and the idea behind Java is when you run Java code, it's supposed to look virtually the same on any kind of platform. So in other words, a Java program that runs on an Apple or Mac should look the same as a Java program that runs on a Linux box. It should look the same as a Java program that runs in a Windows box. That actually should look the same as a Java program that runs on a mainframe. So all of that should look the same. But it really didn't for a lot of different reasons. The platforms showed GUI things like we just looked at differently, etc. So instead of, plus those things were known as being heavyweight components, so they took up more memory than they had to. So years ago, they went back and they rewrote a lot of these components. So the original components were Java components. The next components were called Java Swing components, and we'll talk about Swing in a much later chapter. But Swing components are always shown instead of being Java dot, it's Java X dot. So from the Java X Swing library, we're using the JOptionPane, which, as you already saw, allowed us to semi-GUI-ize the way our inputs and outputs looked. This was the same, and this was the same. What was different was we used an input string and an output string. We use the input string because every value that we read into that show input dialog box is a string. So for our hours and for our rate, which were numeric variables, we had to put them into a temporary string variable and then convert them over into their double. And that's what we're doing. We didn't have to do a conversion like that for these two variables because they're already strings. All right? So hopefully what that did was it showed you how we had to set that up. After that, everything was the same. Then we went in and we built our output string, and we built it incrementally, in other words, line by line. All right? Then we printed out the entire output string at one time, as opposed to having a bunch of, printing them out line by line on a bunch of different JOptionPane.showMessage dialog. So again, the input was JOptionPane show input dialog, the word input that you see there. Again, you can put your mouse there to get more information if you want to do so. And for the output, it's show message dialog, which again, you can get more information about. All right, so we printed out the information both in a GUI format, in a message box, and in a more of a traditional type of non-GUI or console format, just using our system.out.println. We also saw, and I didn't even mention it in the previous program, we had a system.out.print, which kept it on the same line. All right? So that's it for our next program. In the next chapter, we're going to go in and just keep refining this and adding on to it. And I'll be back with that shortly.